Before I begin, I need to call my comrades, elders, and ancestors into this space, making it holy, making it a temporary home. I want to offer a little bit of orientation to today's message. I wrote this at a unique intersection in my life, and Take Me to the River is where all of those things start to merge. There are streams of thoughts that are pure and poetic and melodic, which includes the song I've shared in the newsletter. And there are streams that speak to a seminarian trying to bridge personal reflection and spiritual practices and the art of sermonation. And by the end, we will weave all of these knowings together. Come with me now. 1, I came here by way of water, and you did too. I don't remember being in my mother's womb. I wonder if anyone remembers that sacred time, but I stopped short of a Google search because something tells me that I will fall down a deep internet conspiracy rabbit hole. So for my version of events, we don't remember. This means that I get to play in the idea of what if. What was it like to be waterside? What was it like to be a mer person? What was here before now? I assumed that there was peace in staying, and then there was the pulling of going, until that is, going was easier than staying. And then without preamble, we knew that the water was no longer home. We come into the light. We come landside. The first time we see, the first time we are seen, the first time our skin is touched, the first time we push air through our lungs, starting a whole new cycle of life. 2, at some point I moved away, and now as I grow into my wisdom, I find myself coming back. I recall the first time I attended a UU church. It was in Minneapolis in 2000. I worked for the summer youth program, but was interested in learning more about the UU faith. That first Sunday, I was nervous at best because it required that I be present to my own faith experience and on the defense for the foolishness that we now call microaggressions. Because my experience of racism is older than the nuanced language we've been able to develop. I was there as a visitor, VISTOR. I didn't plan to stay or get comfortable, but the truth is I did, and I went back many times. In fact, when I moved from Minnesota to Michigan, I made the local UU church my faith home. The first time I saw was seen. The first time my spiritual heart felt tended. The first time I was spiritually vulnerable, starting a whole new cycle of life. 3, to a new river with a new me. I am river. Every waterway starts with a small drop of water. The Mississippi starts at a spot that you can walk with 10 steps down. Thank you, Indigo Girls. The Mississippi starts in a Minnesota State Park, Itasca State Park. It is a crack in the land, an urgency racing from the unknown toward the unknowable, carving a path, befriending roots, smoothing rocks along its way, creating banks and shorelines, carving, curving island masses, adapting as it goes, unafraid of sharp turns, hidden underground routes, or to drop into cascading falls. The trickle becomes the creek, which gathers into a pond, which is a type of rest, and a pond that wakes from an early spring thaw, forging on to a stream, which winds into a lake, which is another kind of rest, and a final preparation for a rush to the sea. The first time we see something greater than ourselves, the first time we experience the power of collective liberation, the first time we are beloved community, starting a whole new cycle of life. Friends, I cannot speak for you, but for me, on March 13th of 2020, COVID-19 became real. The CDC came in with slow warnings and waves until it crested into a global pandemic. The world shifted. I, like many of you, found myself in a frozen lake of feelings, experiencing emotional and spiritual paralysis. What was happening? What were we supposed to do? It is hard to believe that that was 3 short years ago. So much has transpired and been transformed. I find myself coming back to a new river with a new me. As we slowly move into the direction of social, emotional, spiritual recovery that comes after a global pandemic, I am asking, who will I be? How do I, in the container of Kiana Dene, a complex configuration of tributaries joined to one another, move to my next? As a ministerial aspirant, I am asking, who will I be? Who will we be? How do we, in the container we call Unitarian Universalist faith, rooted in the 1646 Cambridge Platform, rooted in the 1961 merger that created the Unitarian Universalist Association, rooted in the 1985 women-led changes to the language of our Article 2 bylaws, rooted in our 2017 process of the 8th principle adoption. How, in the container of Unitarian Universalist faith, how do we practice spiritual vulnerability? How do we create a narrative of safety and thriving in a post-pandemic and late-stage capitalism, in a culture that thrives off patriarchy, white supremacy, and religious nationalism? How do we move past fear? And how do we recenter covenant and connection? My heart responds. What if radical welcome, stewardship, and belonging were our compass rose headings? What if we centered those ways of being at the core of how we grow our faith community? 1, radical welcome. Such a heavy, nuanced term that we love to use in UU land. We use it like it is common language, but the truth is, radical welcome is an emerging word and way of being. I won't hold us to a hard definition, but I will offer some consistent themes. Radical welcome seems to be a mixture of spiritual hospitality, intentional connection, and centering, D or re, depending on where you stand in the equation, with the goal of membership, with the goal of collective wholeness. To be clear, radical welcome is not a call to assimilate. It is a call to incarnate, to fully become, fully immersed. It is not just an invitation to be in shared space. The door is open, you can come in, or a call to include those who are willing to be in shared space. I left the door open. I'm glad that you came in. Oh no, radical welcome. It is a demand to allow the energy to be incorporated and to be transformative. I am glad we built this door, and have no fear, we will build it again and again and again for all who wish to enter. 2, stewardship. I used to think that stewardship was a fancy way to say money. I thought it was passing the hat and annual giving done by members. I know churches need money, but money was not my ministry, so I didn't pay much attention. That was until someone suggested I have a volunteer drive during the stewardship campaign. This confused me, so I decided to do a Google search, which this time felt safe. I found this definition of stewardship: the office and duties and obligation of a steward, the conducting, supervising, or managing of something, especially the careful and responsible management of something entrusted to one's care. This made me pause. This definition had nothing to do with money, and I was drawn to the intense action words of duty and obligation. I started to see volunteering as a kind of equity stewardship. Now, because I've made this term up, I will loosely define it, equity stewardship, as the work, labor, time, and non-monetary contributions that sustain a community. I could see how the financial and equity stewardship worked in concert, ebbing and flowing with each other with respect to each other. I want to be clear, we need money. We do. Please give as you are able, but do so knowing that on the other end, there is somebody doing the required equity stewardship of sorting, counting, documenting, and making decisions about how it is spent, saved, and managed. It is a both and equation. Stay with me now, friends. Do you recall the first time you entered a UU church? What struck you that first time? What made you come back? How did you shift from visitor into regular? Were there behaviors? Was it like having a preferred spot to sit, having a favorite coffee cup? What made you ask, could this be my faith home? What made the response, yes? Reflect on your community and ask, how are you stewarding the building, the connections, the relationships with staff, ministers, non-paid super volunteers, and fellow attendees? Are you carefully and responsibly managing the resources that have been entrusted to you? 3, belonging. When they were younger, I asked my kids if they were Black, and they would say yes. Then as time went on, I would ask, how do you know that you are Black? And we spent time exploring race. They were able to say, I know that I'm Black because you're my mom. Look at my skin, look at my hair, our community, our traditions like Juneteenth. And as they get older, 15 and 13, we talk about what it means to be Black in tender ways, in nuanced ways, how to plan for a day at the beauty shop, how to arrive at the barber shop when they open to avoid the line, how to not get killed at a traffic stop, in the neighborhood, in the park, at the bodega, in their bed on a no-knock warrant at the wrong address. As a Black mom, I must teach my kids both and. As a parent, I must create a narrative of safety and thriving in a post-pandemic and late-stage capitalism, in a culture that thrives off patriarchy, white supremacy, and religious nationalism. And it starts by making sure they know what it means to be Black, to know the edge of where they start and stop, to know when the water is no longer safe, when to seek the safety of the shore. How do you know that you are a Unitarian Universalist? How do you know the people sitting next to you are your people? When you hear the words of the chalice lighting, is that your chalice lighting? Is it their chalice lighting? Or is it our chalice lighting? What are your indicators of belonging? Stay with me now. We are coming around the river bend. Our desire to be in fellowship can feel like an urgency racing from the unknown to the unknowable. Finding our path may look like staying to help with chairs, volunteering to take notes at a meeting. Carving out a way may consist of co-leading a newly formed team, leading a local march on reproductive rights. We have to be ready to adapt, unafraid of sharp turns, hidden underground routes, or to drop into cascading falls. In this way, belonging is a form of bravery. We are arriving at a new river. What if UU congregations were radically welcoming? Each person who comes is fully supported to become. What if we had a vibrant stewardship program that married finance and equity? What if each person shared their divine gifts in service to the whole? What if the goal was belonging, not attendance, not membership, but to hold people in the most tender place of longing? I came here by way of water, and you did too. As I grow into wisdom, I find myself coming back to a new river with a new me. I am making my way back to the river. The first time we see, the first time we are seen, the first time our skin is touched, the first time we push air through our lungs, my spiritual heart felt tended. I was spiritually vulnerable. There is something greater than ourselves. It is collective liberation, and it comes when we are the beloved community. This is how we get to the sea, starting a whole new cycle of life. Ashe and amen, my friends. Ashe and amen.